Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay and the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
How's it going, Knight fans? Happy Bowl Week. This is the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. My name is Jeff Sharon, along with Eric Lopez. Eric, have you gone bowling yet this week?
I am about ready to go bowling, my friend. I'm ready. I'm not, but I am eager to start.
It's Bowl Week here in Orlando, and for the first time, UCF playing in a bowl game at home in the AutoNation Cure Bowl against the Arkansas State Red Wolves. And we've got that and plenty more on tap on our podcast this week. In addition, we'll look at what's been going on in the we'll be previewing actually the game with Danielle Jenkins, who covers the Sun Belt Conference. Great interview with her, checking in on what to expect from Arkansas State, how their season has gone. We'll also take a look at what's been going on around the American in terms of all the coaching changes. Willie Taggart leaving the American and USF heading to Oregon, and some big name coaches coming into not just the American but also the state of Florida in general. We'll riff on that a little bit. And then we'll also chat up some basketball as we head into the winter break. But football is it, and we're going to start with that, Eric Lopez. And don't forget, folks, you can follow us on Twitter at UCF_Banneret. Follow me at Jeff_Sharon. And follow Eric at Eric Lopez Elo. You can also look us up at blackandgoldbanneret.com for all the latest on our podcast and occasional features as well. And then you can also hit us up as well on Facebook as well. Just look up Black and Gold Banneret. All right, Eric, here we go. December 17th, just a few days away now. UCF and Arkansas State, the Knights back in a bowl game, facing a team that actually finished one game better than them in terms of the overall standings at Arkansas State. The co-Sun Belt champions at 7-5. The Red Wolves coming into town to face UCF in what is this? Basically a home game for UCF. Their first game in the, Camping World Stadium, yeah, but basically their first game in the old Citrus Bowl since the 2006 season. And it will be a special occasion with the AutoNation Cure Bowl. Of course, we've went over it in last week's show. We had Alan Gooch on, who's obviously long time connected to the UCF program, who's now the CEO of the Cure Bowl, and an exciting time for the guys running this game, and an exciting time for UCF. And now that we're just a couple days away, and this matchup has sort of has taken root, the more we think about this Arkansas State team, Eric, the more I start getting worried. They're a good football team. I've been trying to tell people, don't laugh. This is a good team out of the Sun Belt. They've won 7 of their last 8, all of them in conference. Their defense has been getting better progressively throughout the year, and they over the last really 6-7 years, this has been a pretty good program so far. I mean, are you as concerned as I am about this? That it could go sideways in a hurry if we're not careful?
Yeah, I'm concerned from a different perspective, and I always go to Vegas. And this number for UCF and Arkansas State started at about 6.5, 6, depending where you're looking. And it's kind of stayed that way. You know what I mean? It's not like people are jumping on UCF to, 2-3 points or either way. So it tells you that people think this will be a close game.
I'm looking at the numbers right now. You'd be interested to see this. I'm looking at OddsShark.
Yeah.
And the number has actually dipped a little bit. It's gone down to 5.5.
Yeah.
UCF is
fascinating.
UCF favored by 5.5. Here's the number that really interested me. Last week, I looked at the early betting numbers in Vegas. 60% of the early money in the first 72 hours was on Arkansas State.
Wow.
60%. So that tells me that Vegas thinks that the Red Wolves here are undervalued in this game.
Well, they know something, and you keep in mind, and this is kind of the rule of thumb, and when you look at football spreads, usually the home team gets 3 points automatic.
Mm-hmm.
So if the home team is worth, that's the theory. That if it's an even game, if the home team is they'll give 3 points as the favorite to the home team, in other words. Now, I know this is quote-unquote a neutral game, but let's be honest. This game's in Orlando. Obviously, it's in UCF's backyard. So that's why I thought the spread would be bigger. So really, I have to believe that Vegas obviously takes that into account. If you're telling me it's 5.5, maybe if this game was played in a neutral field, it'd probably be a 2.5, 3-point spread if you take away the 3 points based on home field. So that's what interests me and concerns me a little bit. I think Arkansas State is kind of getting the short stick, right? It's kind of interesting. I think UCF fans, we always feel like we're disrespected when we're playing a Power 5 school and we're playing a big-time opponent and we're an underdog and, they don't respect us. And I feel like it's the other way around here, right? Like, I don't know if the fan base respects Arkansas State.
No,
but
I don't
really,
think they do.
And yet, you look at the Sun Belt League, again, it's ironic, right? It's kind of the Sun Belt has some quality programs. Appalachian State should have beaten Tennessee opening night of the college football season.
Georgia Southern,
Tyson Summers there. Troy gave Clemson all they can handle in Death Valley. So these teams have athletes. These teams can play. And Arkansas State, the Cure Bowl is a big bowl game for the Sun Belt. They're going to be excited to play, and I think they're going to enjoy being the underdog. And I think that's I think there are concerns. There's concerns of what if this offense struggles like it did towards the end of the year?
Yeah.
You may have to be dependent on your defense. You might be all of a sudden you're in the fourth quarter and it's a 3-6 point game and you're like, wow, this could be a tight game. So yeah, I definitely have caution to win. It reminds me of another game, and it's a game you were a part of, and that was the St. Pete Bowl against when UCF played Rutgers.
Yep.
And you know where I'm going with this.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of UCF fans went to St. Pete. Everybody was excited. Everybody's like, it's going to be like a de facto UCF home game. This will be no problem. Who's Rutgers? Rutgers ain't anything that great. And what happened was Rutgers was very physical in the line of scrimmage and beat UCF that day. Obviously, Greg Schiano was the head coach. They had future NFL players like Mohamed Sanu, who is an NFL receiver now with the Atlanta Falcons and was with the Cincinnati Bengals for a long time. I believe Devin McCourty, who's with the Patriots, was on that team too. So my point is, I think we get comfortable because, it's a home game, it's in our backyard and this or that. And as that game against Rutgers proved, that doesn't guarantee you anything. And I think that's important for the players. And I think the coaching staff will make sure they know this, but it's important that the players don't treat this just like, we're here at home and, it's a pretty easy, comfortable thing.
Yeah. One of the things I'm looking at, obviously I'm, looking at the Vegas numbers too. I got a couple nuggets for you, Eric. Here we go. Arkansas State 7-1 straight up, 6-2 against the spread in their last 8. UCF 7-3 against the number in their last 10. But bear in mind that Arkansas State's quarterback, Justice Hansen, touched upon him a little bit last week. Sophomore, big kid. He's figuring it out. He's thrown for 10 touchdowns, 2 picks in the last 6 games. Arkansas State's 23rd in the country in average yards per catch among teams with 200-plus receptions. So their offense is built on explosiveness, and they figured it out, as Danielle Jenkins is going to tell us here in a little bit. And their defense has been very good. They've kind of been like us a little bit, in that the defense has kind of carried the weight. But the difference is their offense has really gotten better over the course of the season, where I think we've maybe taken a few steps back. They got 2 great defensive ends, Chris Odom and Javon Rollin-Jones, and they've combined for 35 tackles for loss and 23.5 sacks. If we're not careful, they're going to have a field day in our backfield against Mackenzie Milton. And this is one thing that I got a little bit concerned about with UCF. So the total has gone under in 6 of UCF's last 7. And if it goes under in this matchup, the over-under is 50. That's going to bode well for Arkansas State, in my opinion. So UCF, this is the number that really freaked me out. The Knights have lost their past 10 games against teams with winning records. Arkansas State's got a winning record. So we feasted on competition. We're right at 500. We feasted on competition that we should, and we haven't gone up in competition just yet. So I'm a little concerned about this, and combine that with the fact that this is a team in the Sun Belt that's been getting hot down the stretch, that's not afraid of playing up against a team like UCF. This could be a long night if UCF doesn't come ready to play. I'm looking at a couple of places here. Campus Insiders tends to favor Arkansas State. They say that they actually think that UCF is going to lose the game to Arkansas State, 28-24 is their score prediction. SB Nation says that that the smart pick is going to be Arkansas State plus the 5.5. Everywhere I'm looking, man, this is like, oh boy, we need to bring it here. This game is not rated very high in terms of watchability, but I think actually it should be a pretty good football game between two pretty aggressive, pretty good teams that are kind of, I think, have kind of converged in terms of their directions for the season. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting game. Obviously, I think what everybody wants to see is how does UCF's offense look? They've gotten off to fast starts and then kind of stutter a little bit. They're not going to be able to afford to do that, I think, on Saturday. So can they maneuver and be consistent on offense? And then you brought up an interesting point. Arkansas State has some playmakers, passing game. So I think it's going to be a key for UCF to get off to a good start and get the lead early and maybe go up a score or two and then dominate the line of scrimmage and run the football like they did earlier this year. And I think that'll be a couple of keys to watch in this football game, because if Arkansas State hangs around and it's a 3 to 6 point game going towards the second half, they're going to be very excited and feel they can win this game. And they're going to be confident. They're playing very good football down the stretch, and they got some athletes. And I think that we cannot underestimate that. And, that's what happens in these type of bowl games. You don't know what the emotions will be like for each of these players. And, Arkansas State will be ready to play. And I think it'll be an interesting game. I think a lot more interesting than I think people think. And you're right. This would not be surprising to me if we're in the fourth quarter and we're sitting next to each other in the press box and we're like, wow, this has been a very good football game.
Yeah, Scott Frost knows that too. Here's Scott this week talking about the Red Wolves.
They've had a really good season. They started out slow and really came on, played really well in their conference, in the games that they played in conference. It's a team that's been improving all year, and I'm impressed with what the coaches have done and what the players have accomplished.
And there it is, Scott Frost. He respects Arkansas State, but many don't. And maybe part of that is because of the Sun Belt. Well, we've got a person that knows the Sun Belt very well. My good friend Danielle Jenkins.
Yeah, the Fun Belt Conference.
That's right. That's what they like to call herself. She's covered that league for now going on 3 seasons. She's, in fact, as she'll tell us, she is a graduate of one of the schools in the conference. She's covered media days for the Sun Belt. She's covered Sun Belt football and basketball. And as a part of a little bit of a Central Florida sports history that I had the privilege of sharing with her in our past careers, which we'll share. But here is Danielle Jenkins talking about Arkansas State. And joining us now here on the podcast, of course, person who has covered the Sun Belt, has covered Sun Belt Media Days for now the last 3 seasons, covers Sun Belt football and, of course, basketball. A friend of mine's, long time. We used to work, in fact, part of a little Central Florida history. Of course, I speak of our guest now, Danielle Jenkins. How you doing, Danielle?
Doing great, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Now, for those that don't know, Jeff, me and Danielle worked together a few years ago, and Danielle, I'll let you tell the story. We were the Florida Collegiate Summer League. We both did play-by-play. And we got to call the last sporting event that was ever held at Tinkerfield.
Yeah, it was crazy. We got to work together with the Florida Collegiate Summer League that year. I served as an intern. And, of course, you were working with the Orlando Monarchs and had the opportunity to call the final game there, working in the playoffs for the Florida Collegiate Summer League. It was the Orlando Monarchs taking on the Winter Park Diamond Dogs. And, man, what a game it was. I think it was one of the craziest baseball games I've ever been to in my entire life. I don't think there's one that can top that one. I feel like we had about 30 runs in that game and saw just about anything that you could imagine.
Yeah, there was a dust-up in that game, if I'm not mistaken, too, Danny. You guys had a little bit of everything, so Tinkerfield went out with a blast, huh?
Hey, I mean, it was everything and more that you could have wanted for a playoff game, with the intensity and just a really fitting end for the finale there at the field.
Yes, it was. And here we are now this Saturday. I'm going to be around that area for the bowl game now. It's now known as Campy World Stadium. There is no more Tinker Field, but there will be a football game. UCF's back there, and the opponent is one you know very well, Arkansas State, a team that's played very well and coming in as the co-Sunbelt champions. What can you tell us about Arkansas State?
Well, guys, it was almost surprising to see the turnaround that they made this season. As you know, they started 0-4 to begin the year. It was the 4 games that they played out of conference before they started just a complete Sun Belt stretch to end the year. But the way they started, it looked like it was going to be tough to pull out a victory at all. I mean, it was a rough start to the season, certainly not what head coach Blake Anderson was looking for from his team. But then they almost went undefeated in conference play after that 0-4 start, went 7-1 to end the season. Had that slip up against Louisiana Lafayette, but were able to hold on and be co-Sunbelt champions with Appalachian State. Of course, with that Sunbelt Conference championship game coming in the future, there is no championship game at this point. So co-champions right now, but it's their 5th Sunbelt championship in 6 years, and really a successful program all the way around. They've got success across the board, not just football. Basketball is doing well as well, and both the men and the women. So a successful season out there in Jonesboro despite the rough start.
Danielle, UCF comes into this game at 6-6. Arkansas State's the only team here that's above 500 at 7-5. And so far UCF, like we've seen, throughout the year, they've been riding the defense, which may seem like a little bit of a surprise with Scott Frost at the helm, but the defense has been great for the Knights. So, what sort of a threat are they facing from the Arkansas State offense in this bowl game?
Well, of course, Blake Anderson stepped away from his offensive coordinator position at the University of North Carolina when he came on to the scene there at Arkansas State, was hired in December of 2013. So he is an offensive-minded guy, but that was really where a lot of their struggles came early on in the season because they didn't have a quarterback. They didn't know who they were going with. It was a bit of a toss-up there as to who they were going to have. They didn't really have that chemistry. So once they finally got it together is when it really all started clicking with that first victory in conference play. I believe it was a 1-point victory and really just a close call, but it started getting the ball rolling and really figured it out. Both Chad Wojtek and Justin Hansen split time at quarterback. They went toward Hansen there finally when they settled in, and they had 27 players who competed in their first career game for them this season, including 9 starters. Both of those quarterbacks had their first game this year, so chemistry really a big deal in the beginning part of the season. They finally got that figured out, and of course, I mean, with any team, once you've got that and you're all on the same page and you get the ball rolling, then it was just, it all started clicking and they really were able to get a lot accomplished and have a great, strong finish to the end of the season.
You mentioned Blake Anderson. For a change, Arkansas State's had a coach now for multiple seasons. For a while there, it was kind of the one-and-done place. Hugh Freeze coached there for a year in 2011. Gus Malzahn coached in 2012 for a year before going back to Auburn. Brian Hartson coached there for a year in 2013. Then he left for Boise State. He's now finishing up in his 3rd season. Rumors came about during the last few weeks about him at the Baylor job. What can you tell us about Blake Anderson? What makes him tick?
Well, yes, I think that had a lot to do with the success that they've had, is just having that consistency. I had the opportunity to speak with them during media day. They have an event the night before the actual media day takes place where all the media members are just hanging out with the coaches and the players, kind of a different dynamic just because you aren't on the spotlight. You're not asking them questions. You're just getting to see them as people. And so I had the opportunity to hang out with them. We actually bowled a game together. They had us at a little alley where we had some bowling opportunities, play pool, all this kind of stuff. So got to see them out of their element and just hang out with them. And it's interesting to see the dynamic that Anderson has brought to this team. Well, not just with that consistency, but he's relatable for these guys, but he's also respected. So he really brings an interesting dynamic to them because he's a younger guy. He really gets the guys and connects with them on their level and is relatable, like I said, but he's also very well respected and he's getting the job done. And he recently said that now the guys know he cares about them more than just on the football side of things. That's something that takes time, and that consistency and continuity of being there for now this third season after having so much turnover there in that position has really led to a lot of the success and just building on the success this program already had, obviously with their 5th conference championship in the last 6 years.
Danielle, Coach Anderson gets a lot of credit in, being an offensive guy, but I feel like sometimes, looking at the numbers, I think, kind of like UCF, this Red Wolf team defense has been kind of flying under the radar, especially as they've come down the pike in the Sun Belt Conference season. They've given up, aside from the loss, they've given up under 20 points in 5 of their conference games this year, and I look at their third down percentage defense at 37%. That's 41st in the nation. Now that's nothing to sneeze at in particular. So. On defense, I'm as someone who covers the Knights and isn't, I'll be honest, a Knight fan. That kind of has me a little bit worried, considering that UCF is putting a true freshman quarterback out there once again. So, how good has the defense been this year in this late run in the Sun Belt Conference, where they've won 7 of 8?
Well, I think one of the biggest keys to point out is their victory over Troy, and that one hurts for me, guys, because I am a Trojan alum, and that's the one game that I watched of theirs all the way through this year, obviously for personal reasons, but it was absolutely phenomenal watching their defense at work because a 35-3 victory. It was a victory over what was then a top 25 team, the only top 25 team they played at that point when they were playing them this season. It's just their second victory over a top 25 team since they joined the FBS back in 1992. And what an impressive victory it was. Now, the next week, they ended up slipping up and lost to Louisiana Lafayette. But again, it was a close game. That close loss again from back at the beginning of the season, that last loss that they had in that out-of-conference game was to FCS Central Arkansas. And that really was a turning point for them because, they were talking in the locker room that it was just quiet. They couldn't believe it. They were stunned. This is a team that's been winning conference championships, and all of a sudden you lose to an in-state FCS team, and no one thought it would happen. Well, that kind of turned things around and really got this team together. I mentioned they were really waiting for that moment when they all clicked and when it all came together. And it really seems like after that really close loss, it really brought them together. But that defense has been phenomenal throughout the year. They've done really well down the stretch, as you mentioned, as they've only given up, I think it was the 24 points that they gave up to Louisiana Lafayette was the most that they'd given up since like way back in the beginning of the season when they gave up 27 to Georgia Southern, that first victory of the year. So, once they got the offense really rolling, it was the defense that was carrying them, but they needed some offensive production to just kind of seal the deal. And once that got all together, man, they almost looked unstoppable.
Now, you mentioned Troy, and that's a good segue because I want to ask you about the Sun Belt, the conference. And I think maybe doesn't get the respect nationally that maybe the people in the Sun Belt believes it deserves. And there's some valid points to that. Troy gave Clemson all they can handle earlier this year at Death Valley. Could have easily won that game. You have teams like, for example, in the Sun Belt, Louisiana Lafayette's had a good program. Appalachian State outplayed Tennessee this year in Knoxville. They've had a tremendous program. They just moved into the Sun Belt. Georgia Southern, a lot of people down here have followed them closely due to the connection with Tyson Summers in his first year as head coach. Of course, was a defensive coordinator at UCF. Just give us your thoughts on the Sun Belt as a league as a whole.
Well, they don't call it the Fun Belt for nothing, guys. It really is a fun league to watch because you mentioned there's a lot of teams that are right there in the mix. Even Idaho, a team that has been one of the bottom teams in the league, had a great year this year, went 8-4 overall, one of their best seasons in recent history. They won their last 4 straight, which is the longest streak in the conference. And you mentioned Appalachian State. Right there at the top with Arkansas State for that co-championship. Appalachian State going back to another bowl game this year, heading to Montgomery for the Camellia Bowl. It's been impressive to watch these teams succeed. Troy, that one broke my heart, especially that Clemson game. Eric, that's a touchy subject for me because I watched it And I'm telling you, I believe that was a fumble, but we'll go ahead and skip past that. But it was really impressive to watch all of these teams with a lot of success this year. And it's going to be interesting when it gets to the point that there is a conference championship game here and get the chance to see Appalachian State and Arkansas State, where this year they didn't see each other, so they didn't play on the field. So we've got that co-championship. It'd be interesting to see who would win that matchup. So in the years to come, that's going to be a fun one to watch.
You know, it should be noted, Danielle, also that a little bit of trivia for you. UCF actually was in the Sun Belt Conference from 1991 all the way until 1992 as a member of the league, and actually in 1991 did play Arkansas State in the only matchup ever between these two teams. But the program in Jonesboro in general, I've always looked at them as a real example of success. You know, it's easy for us to say, yeah, well, they're kind of like, you know, they're a low FBS level team being in the Sun Belt. Okay, fine. But they've won the league multiple times in the last several years. They've been to bowl games in every year since 2011. I think they've won, 4 Sun Belt championships in the last 5 years. This is a pretty good program with a pretty good historical track record. It's just you don't hear about it because they're in the because they're not, you know, a Power 5 team. So they've kind of been there and done that, and they're not afraid to play teams like UCF, are they?
No, I mean this is a team that doesn't shy away from competition. I mean, this is a team that is excited, and I think a lot of it with the success there has to do with just the support around the program. They may not get the coverage or the notoriety, but if you go to Jonesboro, I've had the opportunity to go once before for a sideline job when Arkansas State was playing at home, and being there in Jonesboro, I mean, that town is incredible. It's interesting to note that, I mean, obviously UCF has the big home field advantage here. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out with the home advantage being there in the hometown. But the Red Wolves are no stranger to the hometown advantage because Jonesboro definitely does that for them. I'm not sure how the crowd will travel to Orlando, but Red Wolf fans are rowdy and they take it seriously with school spirit. I mean, they paint the town red. When you go there, it's hard to not catch the fever and catch the buzz because it's contagious. It's fun seeing the entire town painted red supporting the Red Wolves. So they really have had a lot of success there, and I think a lot of that has to do with just the support around the program.
Yeah, I'm with you because I for one, think that UCF fans need to bring it to this game. I mean, no excuses because it's basically a home game because if they don't, you know, it could be, you know, it could get a little bit out of hand. And if the Arkansas State fans travel well, this could be a really interesting atmosphere.
Absolutely. I think it has a lot of potential to be a really good matchup. And then also, obviously, crowd is always a factor. So we'll see who gets that advantage. Obviously, right now, the advantage on paper, clearly going to UCF. But, you know, it never plays out how you think sometimes. So we'll see how it comes down on the field.
Plus, this bowl game is important for not only Arkansas State, but for the Sun Belt, Danielle, right? I mean, I think when you think of the Sun Belt, I know the New Orleans Bowl has always been an important bowl game for that conference as well. But I think the Cure Bowl, and you talk to the people in the Sun Belt, this is an important bowl game. And the fact that the co-champions are here says that, doesn't it?
Absolutely. They have so many bowl tie-ins now. It's really incredible to see just the growth that the league itself has had, sending 6 teams to bowl games this year. Obviously, the Camellia Bowl, which I mentioned earlier, which is in Montgomery, the Cure Bowl here, even the Idaho Potato Bowl. I mean, everyone you hear about it just because it's the Idaho Potato Bowl, but Idaho is in the game, which it makes sense. It's a hometown team. They had a great season, put them in a bowl game, and put them right there at home, which gives them the advantage there. You mentioned the New Orleans Bowl. That's always been a big tie-in with the Sun Belt itself, based in New Orleans. They're inside the Superdome. Really interesting dynamic getting to go down to Media Day, be in the Superdome with the Raging Cajuns going back from Louisiana Lafayette. They've been there several times in the past. It's always fun to talk with Coach Mark Hudspeth about the advantage being there in New Orleans. Always fun to talk to him at Media Day about coming back because he's had so much success success there. And then also the Arizona Bowl, which was added in this year. And then the Dollar General Bowl, my Trojans heading down to Mobile to play there at Lad Peoples Stadium. So 6 bowl games for the Sun Belt. And, of course, this Cure Bowl getting one of the co-champions there in the Arkansas State Red Wolves, a big one for the Sun Belt.
All right, Danielle, we're going to put you on the spot. Who you got?
Wow.
Oh, guys. All right. Well, I'm going to have to go Arkansas State. The only reason, I'm not trying to be a homer here, but I am going to go with that they've overcome a lot of struggles this year, and they ended on a strong note because they ended with that victory. They had that loss to Louisiana Lafayette there at the end in the second to last game, but they won the next one. They won that one against Texas State to steal that co-championship, and I'm going to say that they're going to ride that momentum and pick up the bowl victory.
So that has nothing to do. Wait. That has nothing to do there, Danielle, with that Troy UCF rivalry back in the A-Sun TAC days in basketball. I mean, Jeff was a student. All right, I'll tell you this, Danielle. Back, I think it was 2003. I think, or the A-Sun championship. It was called the TAC back then when Troy beat UCF and Ray Abelar. I don't think you still haven't gotten over that one, have you, Jeff? I know I haven't.
Well,
and
for a while there, it was Troy and UCF in men's basketball kind of going back and forth. And what I remember was a game around that time. UCF would have been on a long winning streak in men's basketball, and Troy came into the old arena riding a win streak of their own, and the UCF arena was packed. It was actually a school record for attendance in that building, something like 4,700 people. And Troy came out, and I remember I talked with Rob Ross, who used to be a basketball player for UCF, and Danielle, you'd appreciate this. Troy came out in the first half, and they hit 72% from the field, and they hit something like 7 threes in the first half. It wasn't dinking and dunking inside. They were blitzing us from beyond the arc, and I remember thinking, this team can't miss. This is unbelievable. So yeah, a little bit going back and forth about Troy, but that was a good time back in the A-Sun days between UCF and Troy.
Yeah, it was before I was officially a Trojan. Now I've always kind of had my ties here and there with some guys from the local area that went to college and played football there. But it was before my days as a Trojan, so I'm not holding it against UCF. And
as a Giants fan, I have to thank you for OCU Manura too. So.
Yeah, and Lawrence Tynes.
That's right.
Obviously, that's a little further back, but yeah, Lawrence Tynes a Trojan too.
Yeah, so. Good stuff. Danielle Jenkins, where can folks find you on Twitter and all that kind of stuff to keep in touch with you throughout the year?
Yeah, on Twitter at Danielle_Faith. Look up Danielle Jenkins. And then I also am on Instagram, same thing, at Danielle Faith. So love to have you guys keep up with everything. It was great to talk with you guys, and I appreciate you having me on.
All right, Danielle, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Enjoy the Bulls this coming December and into January, and we'll catch up with you down the road.
Hey, guys, thanks so much.
And our thanks to Danielle for joining us. By the way, interesting note on her. She actually also does some work for Piedmont College up in Demarest, Georgia, which is a place that I actually taught at for a period of time when I was a sports reporter up in Toccoa, not far away. Beautiful, beautiful campus up in Piedmont. This tiny little private school up in the mountains in North Georgia with a really impressive communication school up there. So wanted to give the Lions a shout out while we had the chance. But Danielle's not joking, man. This is going to be a heck of a matchup, and I think that it's going to be a little bit of a don't take the Sun Belt lightly, man, because this is a good league with some good teams in it, and like I said, they're not afraid to take it to teams that they think that they can punch up at. I always get worried about those games against teams that, where teams feeling like they're punching up at us because they kind of play like they have nothing to lose. And this is their bowl game. They can finish 8-5. That's a pretty good season for them, and a share of the conference crown to boot.
No question about it. And I think this is, as we talked about in the interview, I think this is a big bowl game for the Sun Belt, and it's a big bowl game for them. And it's something they're going to shoot for.
For us too. Scott Frost looking for a bowl win in his first season, but so it's kind of like a clash of cultures in a way,
Yeah, no, you're right. So I think it's going to be a fascinating evening. Should be a good atmosphere, and I'm very looking forward to seeing how the teams come out. And from Arkansas State standpoint, for them, they just basically coming off a bye. They played 2 weeks ago against Texas State, and so basically it's like just an extension of the season. UCF's had 2 weeks off, basically. So that'll be interesting to see how both teams look early in the game as well. If there's any rust, you might see some new plays, some trickeration. Who knows? That's always something to look forward to when you come to bowl games.
Yeah, I think that actually the 2 weeks off as opposed to 3 is going to help us out. I kind of touched upon this last week. I thought we were a little rusty in the St. Pete Bowl when I was there after 3 weeks off. That game was right around Christmas time. This game this week, I think, the 2 weeks off is going to be helpful in terms of getting healthy. So, again, kickoff for this game is going to be on Saturday, December the 17th at Camping World Stadium, 5:30 p.m. kickoff. If you can't make it to the game, first of all, the hell's the matter with you? Second of all, it's on CBS Sports Network at 5:30 p.m. So be on the lookout there. And like I said, UCF's first bowl game in the city of Orlando. It should be fun. You and I, Eric, we will both be there. And following the game, we will have a little post-game debrief after the Cure Bowl as part of the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. So I'm looking forward to doing that with you after the game.
Looking forward to that. It's one of the things that we'll do from time to time in the podcast is report from those big live UCF events, and hope to get you some post-game coverage and our thoughts from the football game as well. And looking forward to it. A place that we used to go frequently a lot.
I know. It seems like it was so long ago, but then it doesn't. But then it's not, right? I mean, I was actually flipping through some old photos that we took when we were there, and it was nice seeing Eric DeSalvo and UCF Knights, who's in charge of the UCF Knights Twitter account, sending out some old photos when we had the old black and gold checkerboard end zones in the old Citrus Bowl back in the day. That was kind of fun to see.
Have you not? I don't think you've been back to the stadium, and I'm talking about the press box. I know you've been back to the stadium as a whole since the renovations and stuff. But
not
as
in
far
the press
as
box since they renovated it.
Because you used to do student broadcasting, as I did.
Yeah. Right down there on press row.
With Matt Dunaway, who's now an SID at Texas Tech men's basketball. Mm-hmm. What else? Matt Eitel was part of your group,
yeah.
right?
It used to be, Victor and Victor Anderson, who's a buddy of ours, used to be involved in that as well, and of course you and a couple other. Emerson Lazia used to be involved in that. He's down
right. He's working at TV Anchor. Yeah, you're right.
So we had some good times up there. It was a good. It was a lot. I'm interested to see the new press box now to see what it's like.
I will be curious to see your face. I think you're going to be shocked how completely you won't even recognize it. How different it is than when we were there. Because back then the press box, it was pretty accessible as far as pretty easy to find the broadcasters. We would run into them a lot frequently and stuff like that. That is not the case, as you will see on Saturday. It's brand new. It's just state of the art. You'll be and you're going to be jealous because now every broadcast crew has their own little suite room basically, and nobody can bother them.
Oh God, really? Oh, come on.
It's fantastic. I mean, and then there's balcony, and it's just amazing.
Schmoes like us don't have to bother. They don't have to bother.
Pretty much, so. Like you have to know where you're going to find them. It's pretty impressive, but it'll be cool, I think, to see that. One more time, at least in the stadium, and who knows? I mean, I have UCF might play future games there down the road as well. So, interesting to see how the fans kind of interact with the area like they used to, and it should be fun.
Yeah, Danny White was kind of he had a little Facebook Live Ask the AD session today, and today we're recording this on Tuesday, December 13th, and he kind of dropped a few breadcrumbs about the possibility of having a game back in the Citrus Bowl. At some point for UCF, a regular season game. So that would be kind of interesting if they're able to pull that off. So,
well, I remember there was a rumor. I want to say it was about a year or two. There was rumors about a possibly UCF playing there against Miami. at a regular season game, and things didn't work out for a variety, whatever reasons. Who knows how true it was or whatever.
Well, UCF did play Miami at Bright House Network Stadium, and I think that's still the attendance record, if I'm not mistaken. That game, I was at that game. It was a packed house.
Oh, in 2009.
Yep.
But there was some chatter that UCF and Miami could play over there, and as part of maybe a 3-game series where they play in campus and then play one game there, and who knows? It never materialized. But that would be something that I would be for in the future, because as you know, sometimes if you want to attract a big time program or a power school, they're not willing to come to campus. So the next best thing you might have to do is, well, if you don't want to come to campus, maybe we could play here at the Campy World Stadium and make it worth your while. Then,
right.
You've seen other example of that was Houston playing Oklahoma this past year. They played it at Reliant.
Yeah, that's
Stadium,
a good point.
It's an NFL stadium. And that's one of the reasons why South Florida has been able to schedule Florida State, is because they've been able to sell them on the fact that, hey, you're playing at Raymond James, which is an NFL stadium. So I think that is something that I could see in the future UCF looking into if teams don't want to play at Bright House or whatever the stadium's going to be named afterwards. I could see that the Campy World possibly being an option to help them attract future opponents.
Yeah, I think that's and I like the idea of thinking out of the box and doing that kind of stuff. So again, we'll kind of see how that materializes, and it's good to see Danny White kind of thinking about that too. I don't know if previous regimes would have even thought really seriously about it, but I think Danny's actually pretty interested in that. So one thing, we're going to take a break here in a little bit, and when we get back, we'll talk a little bit about some coaching moves in the state of Florida and in the American. But just some sad word that I wanted to pass along before we took a break here. I got word earlier today that a really long time member of the UCF Athletics family, we lost him today. Colonel Lee Logan, who's an Air Force veteran, but for a long time was he was seemingly at every UCF sporting event, performing some sort of official function, be it keeping score, doing play-by-play, observing things. He would help out with keeping score at football. He was part of the staff for basketball that would not only do the games at the arena, but would also go over to the Bahamas with the guys because that staff would run that tournament out there for the Battle of Atlantis. He was at volleyball quite often, operating. He would do things like he would operate the scoreboard, and he was actually an academic advisor at UCF for a number of years. Very close with the athletic program. Lee passed away this week, and so our thoughts and prayers are with obviously Lee and his family and friends. I know that Eric, you and I both counted Lee as a friend going back to when we were students, right?
Yeah, it's been a difficult week from that standpoint. It's weird. Lee, as you mentioned, was around if you went to UCF sporting events, and I'm not even just talking about football. We're talking basketball, obviously, but women's basketball, softball. He was always around in softball doing
volleyball,
scoreboard stuff. Baseball, obviously, was his favorite. He used to go there a lot too. Scoreboard there too, and when I first started broadcasting softball was actually around 2007. I was a student, and he was very positive. He was very encouraging of me doing that, and he always enjoyed the other sports. That was the thing that really where we hit it off, and it maybe a lot in a direct way. I think the podcast that we're doing indirectly was maybe in some parts inspired indirectly by Lee with the interactions that we both probably had with him, because as you know, and I had interactions with him, we talked every UCF sport. If it was women's basketball season, we would talk about what's going on with the women's basketball team, and he would throw his 2 cents in. He would talk about what he felt the coaches needed to do. He always was talking about how the coaches should recruit more in the area, and
he was never shy about expressing his opinions. And that's why he was so well respected by everybody in the department.
Sure, and so so he was always around with softball, and he would and then as I started doing softball, even when we were he would always pick my brain. Hey, how's softball doing? What's the outlook? What's it looking like? Do we have this? Do we have that? And we would always talk about those things. I always remember baseball. Brian Armistead was the baseball SID. Lee Logan would always, kind of tease him a little bit. And there was a fun atmosphere. It was always great to chat. But he was always passionate with UCF, and that'll miss that. And so I know he'll be looking from above all UCF sports, and I have a feeling he'll be scrutinizing them from above and maybe questioning some of the scoring decisions. But certainly it's been a tough week there, and our condolences to the family and friends. And I think as we will dedicate this podcast to him, and in some ways helped one of the reasons why we did this is because people like him who enjoyed not just UCF football but enjoyed all UCF athletics.
Yeah, I mean, I knew Lee as a student, as a broadcaster, and later on as a staff member, and then when I did PA at volleyball, he was always really helpful, and we did softball as well and baseball, and he was always. I remember him fondly, doing all the baseball games that I did when I was a student, and him kind of, like you said, he was never shy about expressing his displeasure with what was going on. But he was also, he was always also so complimentary of a number of things that that happened, and it's going to be tough. We missed him at volleyball this year. He wasn't, he wasn't at any volleyball matches on the scores table, and it really wasn't the same without him. And UCF in general is not going to be the same without Colonel Lee Logan. So, Lee, we miss you, and we know you're going to be rooting the Knights on from somewhere in the great beyond. And like we said, just keep an eye out for us. And like we said, we miss you, Lee.
Hello, Night Nation. This is Andrew Fegley.
This is Trey Strelka with the UCF Nightline Podcast, the original, the #1 rated UCF sports podcast.
You can follow us on Twitter and Facebook. On Twitter, it's UCF_Nightline, and at www.ucfnightlinepodcast.com.
Be sure to subscribe to us as well on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and YouTube.
And when you get sick of listening to these guys, make sure you look us up.
Don't forget, that's the UCF Nightline Podcast. Go Knights!
Charge on.
Now, back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast.
All right, welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff Sharon, Eric Lopez with you. We're still talking football today, and some big news throughout this week outside of the UCF sphere of influence. Coaching news in particular. Some big-time coaching moves that both in the American and in the state of Florida. And I guess we'll try and take these in order. The first domino to fall was Willie Taggart, the head coach, now former head coach at USF, who took the Oregon job after Mark Helfrich got fired. There was a little bit of worry on UCF's part that maybe Frost would go back, but instead Oregon decides to go with to pull Willie Taggart out of Tampa and bring him out to Eugene, and he struck when the iron was hot, man. 10-2, the Bulls this year, heading into their bowl game. So that's a big hire for Oregon. Do you think Willie's up to it?
Yes, I do. I think it was a great move. I think Willie Taggart did a great job building South Florida to what they are right now. He did coach at Stanford under Jim Harbaugh, so he's familiar with the West Coast. He's familiar with the Pac-12. Yep. And recruiting, and the guy's self-motivated. I've had a chance to interview him actually multiple times, at the radio station back when I was on in Tampa and in Orlando. And he when you talk to him in the room, he will sell you. He will sell the program. He's a great recruiter, which I think he has gotten. I don't think he gets enough credit for that, as we'll get into with his replacement. But he could coach, and that was a program that was at the bottom when he took it over, and really with not a lot of backing and support from the fan base, and I would argue from the administration. And in particular, he turned that program into a 10-win team this past year, a top 25 caliber team, a team that when you go into next year will probably be the favorites not only to win the American Conference Eastern Division, but maybe the entire conference, and it's a lot of parts for him. So. I think Oregon wanted to go away from the Chip Kelly tree, and I think they want to go a little different. And I think Willie Taggart's a rising star in the industry, and I think he will do well at Oregon.
Well, the dominoes continued to fall as the guy who replaces him is the guy who was fired at the University of Texas, Charlie Strong. This, I think, is I'll go out here. I'll just say it. I think Charlie Strong for USF is an upgrade over Willie Taggart, because it's easy for us to think, oh, well, it didn't go so well in Texas. Charlie Strong did not just get the Texas job out of the blue. Easy for us to forget how good he was at Louisville, former defensive coordinator at Florida. Now he's coming back to the Sunshine State, and he's taking over a program that I think Willie Taggart left in pretty good straits. What do you think? Charlie Strong to USF. Do you think he's going to be an improvement over Taggart?
Well, let's expand on your comments there, because you're not alone in that comment. I mean, I think that's the consistent comment is, wow, they hit a home run, and everybody better watch out now. And you think he's an upgrade. Why do you think he is an upgrade over Willie Taggart when? Here's my counter argument to that.
Okay.
Charlie Strong, in 5 of his 7 years as a head football coach at Louisville and Texas, pretty good jobs, failed to win more than 7 games in 5 of them. Did not win more than 6 games in 3 seasons at Texas, which some believe is the best college football head coaching job in the country. I think he's very overrated. I think he's a good recruiter. Absolutely. He has ties to the state of Florida. No question about it. But as a head football coach, I think he's very overrated. I don't think he is a great X's and O's guy. You look at what his issues have been, in particular in Texas. He couldn't get an offensive going until this past year. And his strength is the defensive side of the ball, and he couldn't figure that out over there. I don't think he's a guy that's comfortable as far as speaking to boosters and selling the program to boosters and media types like a Willie Taggart did. And I think Willie Taggart is getting sold short. Yes. Is Charlie Strong going to recruit at USF? Sure. But I think Willie Taggart did just as good of a job as anybody recruiting that area when you consider all the flaws that USF has. They don't have their own on-campus facilities as far as a stadium is concerned. They don't really have a fan base. Their fan attendance speaks of that. There's a lot of things going against them that Willie Taggart had to go up against, and he was able to overcome. So I'm not as big of a fan of the Charlie Strong hire as others are. I'm not saying it's a bad hire, but I think people got to pump the brakes to suggest that, Scott Frost and UCF has got to be really concerned now, or anybody else in the state, I think is a little naive. I think I've always believed everybody's going to get their players, but can you coach them up?
I'll counter by saying this. You look at his track record at Louisville, 2 years, 7-6, his first 2 years, went to bowl games both years. His last 2 years at Louisville, 11-2, 12-1. All right? And then he makes the jump to Texas. So he was in his last 2 years at Louisville, he was 23-3.
With a first-round quarterback.
With a first-round quarterback.
Teddy Bridgewater.
Yes. Be fair. He was first-round, very good quarterback. But where's Teddy Bridgewater from? South Florida.
Oh, he's in Florida. South Florida.
All
Absolutely.
Right.
Great.
So we know Charlie knows how to recruit the state of Florida. And here's the other thing. When you're coaching at Texas, coaching at a place like Texas is a totally different animal because, you talked about how he had trouble speaking to boosters. Any Florida guy is going to have trouble speaking to boosters at Texas because they think that Texas is, everything's bigger in Texas, and they want you to recruit Texas and get nothing but Texas kids, and Texas. Charlie Strong comes in from Florida saying, I'm going to bring some Florida kids out to Texas, and the Texas boosters are saying, oh, no, you're not. So I think he was put in kind of a no-win situation at Texas with a group of people kind of hangers on to the program that are just impossible to deal with. Congrats to Mac Brown. He figured out how to do it, and that's not an easy and that's not an easy job. I think that he was in an untenable position. I think he's in a much more favorable position at USF in terms of being able to recruit. And let's say, he knows how. I still think he does know how to coach defense. But most importantly, I think the recruiting, keeping kids in the state of Florida, is going to be a real key. Now, speaking of Texas, Who do they hire to replace Charlie Strong? Well, in comes Tom Herman, leaving the University of Houston, a guy who the Texas Boosters have had their eyes on for quite some time. And we know the success that Tom Herman has had at Houston as well. So he leaves the American, but in coming to Houston, well, not really in coming to Houston, the Cougars decide to promote their offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach, and a guy who's been in line for some head coaching jobs over the last few years. And I remember him as a player at the University of Texas. Major Applewhite is the new head coach at Houston. So what are your thoughts on Houston going with Applewhite?
I like the move for Houston. Houston, first of all, Tom Herman's going to be a home run in Texas. He's going to win big there. He might win big next year. He's already got a quarterback that's very talented, Shane Buechele. But I like what Houston, and they kind of accidentally, I think, fell into this because, there was a lot of speculation of where Houston was going with their coaching moves. Lane Kiffin was thrown in there and stuff like that.
Lane Kiffin was tossed around for the USF job, too. More
everywhere.
on that in
everywhere.
a second.
Right, everywhere. But I like the fact they went with Major Applewhite, who was an offensive coordinator there with Houston. He's under Tom Herman. He's well known in that state. He's a legend quarterback at the University of Texas. He's coached everywhere, Rice. He's coached at Texas. And I think he's hungry for this opportunity. I think he will help keep some of the recruits that they already have. And I think they'll get behind them. And Houston's tradition, you always go for the next guy. Who's the next big-time coach? And they've done a great job of that in the past. When you think about, obviously, Tom Herman recently, but before even that, Kevin Sumlin, they got. Obviously did
Artie
great
Briles.
things. Art Briles. So they have a history of doing this. And I like the Applewhite move because he's young, he's energetic, he's going to be hungry to prove something, and he's well known in that state. And from what I was told, and it's been reported actually since, but I was told he's very well liked by the Texas high school coaches over there. And that's a big thing.
Well, he's a Texas kid.
He's a Texas kid. He's well known. And that's a big thing because those high school coaches will have influence on those kids as where they go. That's one of the reasons why Tom Herman's had a lot of success recruiting in Houston is because he was able to bring those guys, and he's well liked by those coaches. If you notice, one of the other moves I'm sure we'll talk about, Matt Rule left Temple for Baylor, and one of the first hires he did at Baylor, he hired one of the top high school guys in that state so he can connect with all those people in Texas. So I love the move for Applewhite. I'm eager to see how he does at his opportunity, what he does as a staff. But I think for Houston, considering the circumstances, I think they got the right guy for that job. I think they would have made a mistake if they would have gone outside with a guy that had to prove himself inside that state. That could have set the program back. I think Applewhite being in there already will help the transition, and they're still going to have a lot of talent coming back going into next year.
Now, you mentioned my next one that I was going to touch upon. Temple loses Matt Rule to Baylor, who replaced Jim Grobe after the Art Briles thing just imploded. It's such a bad situation at Baylor. They got to clean that program up. In your opinion, real quick, does Matt Rule have the ability to do that?
Yes, because he had limited resources at Temple, and he won. And I think that's one of the reasons why Baylor wanted him, because I think they're going to have some limited resources with all the off-the-field stuff that happened at Baylor. He's going to be able to clean up that program, and I think he'll win. And he's got a 7-year deal, so to me it sounds like Baylor's going to be patient with him, and he seems to be already doing the right things. As I mentioned, hiring one of the top high school guys involved in high school coaches in the state to be on the staff so he can have a connection with the state. The guy can coach football, and we've seen that, how he's turned around Temple. And I think if they give him time, he'll do well at Baylor. And I think he's a coach that maybe hasn't gotten the credit that he deserves with the job he did at Temple.
Temple, you mentioned, with a very interesting hire here. Replacing Matt Rule, in comes Florida Gators defensive coordinator and former UCF Knights assistant Jeff Collins. Collins comes over to Temple. I really raised some eyebrows at that when Collins was actually mentioned in the running for our job back when it was open. Since UCF, he has coached at FIU, Mississippi State, and then, of course, he got the job at Florida as a defensive coordinator under Jim McElwain. He's 45 years old. I remember him from the Get Yo Chili Hot days when he was at UCF as a defensive assistant. I A+ hire for Temple going and getting Jeff Collins, I think.
Fascinating. Very fascinated by this. Jeff Collins was obviously rumored for the UCF job last year, and I know in talking to people, he wanted this job. All right.
Yeah, it was out there pretty strong for Jeff Collins.
Yeah, a lot of times, and people know this, if you see like national writers talk about specific coaches for specific jobs, sometimes that's the agent feeding him that information. And Jeff Collins obviously coached under George O'Leary here. I think he wanted this job badly. And I'm sure his people fed that to a lot of people. They fed that to people that I knew that told me the same thing that I know at Florida. All right. So I think he's been eager to be a head football coach. That's kind of been his next step. You mentioned he's coached all over the South. And I'm fascinated to see how he does, because I know some UCF fans didn't want Jeff Collins to be the head coach. There was questions about him can he be a head coach material? You know, is he more of a defensive guy? What he would do?
Well, we're going to find out now.
Yeah, and he's very intense. I think he did a heck of a job at Florida under Jim McElwain there for 2 years. He's done a good job everywhere he's gone. I'm fascinated to see how he does at Temple. But let's be honest, that adds a little sizzle to that Temple UCF game, in my opinion. Now, don't you? He's going to be ready for that game. You know, he's going to circle that game, and he's going to come up with some schemes going up against Scott Frost. That's going to be fun. Interesting to see how he does up in the North. There's been mixed results there. Steve Adasio used to coach Temple, was under Urban Meyer at Florida. He's now at Boston College. He's struggled there. Can Collins bring Florida talent, steal Florida talent to go play at Temple is the biggest question I have, Jeff.
That's going to be a tough act to follow. But if anybody can do it,
right.
Jeff Collins has the right attitude in order to do that. I think he has the right mindset for to get kids to think win first at Temple, a program that's been struggling for a long time, but has come upon good times of late. Over at Cincinnati,
the real big thing for Jeff, real quick.
Yeah,
they'll be fine defensively. What will determine his success or lack of success will be what he does on the offensive side of the ball. We've seen this with guys that are defensive coordinators in college football. Will Muschamp comes to mind. Where they have struggled and they have failed is because of lack of offense and lack of recruiting on the offensive side of the ball. That's something that Jeff has to address, and he will have to do a very good job to be successful. I don't question that Temple will be fine defensively with him. I mean, they're fine. They've been fine without him.
They're going to have to address it without P.J. Walker, too, because he's not going to have him anymore. So.
Correct. Right. So that's important.
Cincinnati let go of Tommy Tuberville after a 4-8 season. They hire Luke Fickell. He is the former co-defensive coordinator for Ohio State. Actually was the interim head coach at Ohio State in 2011 in the transition year between Jim Tressel and Urban Meyer. But Fickell comes over. He's an Ohio State guy through and through. Actually started there as a GA in 99. Actually played at Ohio State from 93 to 96. Columbus, Ohio guy. He comes over to coach at Cincinnati. That's going to be a problem, too, because you talk about another defensive guy who knows how to coach defense. Luke Fickell's the guy if you're Cincinnati, and they had problems with that this year.
Yeah, I like this move. First of all, I thought the Tuberville-Cincinnati relationship had kind of soured. It kind of ran its course. That program's been in decline.
Yeah. The thing when he yelled at the fan, that wasn't a cause of the illness. That was a symptom, and it was pretty much done with after that.
I agree. I like the move with Fickell. You mentioned his background. He's obviously got ties in that state of Ohio, and so he should be able to recruit players there to go to Cincinnati. I think he realized, look, Urban Meyer's going to be here a while. I need to go somewhere else. And this is smart on his part. Let me go to Cincinnati, see if I prove myself. And if I can win there, maybe in a few years, if Urban Meyer steps aside from Ohio State, I could be a guy that's looked at to be the next head coach at Ohio State, possibly down the road.
He's a young guy still, 43 years old.
Absolutely. Very young, very energetic, very enthusiastic. I like the move for Cincinnati. I'm going to say the same thing about him I did for Jeff. What does he do on the offensive side of the ball for Cincinnati will be fascinating to me. You got to believe that he will probably bring that Urban Meyer style spread offense with him to Cincinnati, I would assume. And, one of the things, if you look at the track record, Urban Meyer assistant coaches do very well when they for head coaching jobs. So, and I think if you're Cincinnati, you're hoping that Luke Fickell is your next Tom Herman.
Some other hires I wanted to mention here, not in the American, but of note, especially.
By the way, how great is it? But we're quick.
Yeah,
the American Conference is the conference to go to get the next coach. That has now been clear this offseason. This is the job. This is the league that people. If you wondered if the league was respected, you have just seen it by all the coaches that were hired to power conferences. This is the league that people will go to find the next coach because they respect the programs and the style of football and the talent of football and the depth and the coaching in this league. I think it speaks a lot about this league in the American Conference and the respect it has across college football, that this is the league that people will go to find their next big head coach. And
it's
I think
raised
that's
the competition level in the league, certainly. I think next year,
yes.
I mean, you look around the coaches. I think we've seen a little bit of it with basketball, but especially here in football, this is where we always refer to the MAC, the Mid-American Conference, as the cradle of coaches. This is the cradle of coaches now. I think the American, no question in my mind. Two other hires outside of the American that I wanted to touch upon that UCF I think does need to kind of raise their eyebrows at. Down south, FAU and FIU, both of them hiring new head coaches. I'll start with FIU. Letting go, they fired Ron Turner right after we blew him out down in Miami. Ron Cooper went 4-4 as an interim. He's out of the way now. FIU hires former Miami Hurricanes head coach Butch Davis. Butch is coming back to South Florida to coach FIU. We know how good of a recruiter Butch Davis is. Will he be – well, actually, I'll ask the question here in a second because I want to touch upon FAU in Boca, letting go of Charlie Partridge after a 3-9 year. And it comes down that they hire Lane Kiffin, the offensive coordinator from Alabama, guy who's coached at Tennessee, USC, the Oakland Raiders, certainly a controversial figure. I think he's been chastened quite a bit by working underneath Nick Saban. I think he was a classic case of having too much given to him at once. But FAU, he actually took a pay cut to come to FAU. So Butch Davis at FIU, Lane Kiffin at FAU. I'm going to put this out there. Is this a problem for UCF in terms of recruiting, especially in South Florida?
Yes. This, to me, impacts UCF more than Charlie Strong, believe it or not. And I know that's not a popular opinion. And you just hit part of it. I think Lane Kiffin obviously gets scrutinized a lot and maligned a lot. And some of it he's brought it to himself, honestly.
I think all of it he's brought it to himself, but anyway.
Sure. But let's just put that aside. From an X's and O's standpoint, he knows his football. I mean, look at at Alabama, there's a reason Nick Saban brought him in. And that offense has gone to the next level since he arrived there at Alabama. Everywhere he's gone, they've got good offenses. And I think for FAU, this was a big hire. I think this was a reaction to the FIU hire of Butch. And I think for Lane Kiffin, I think he's tired of the scrutiny. And you mentioned he's still young. It's not like he's an old guy. I think he'll recruit very well at FAU. I think he'll recruit offensive talent there. I think they will win games with him. And I think he's got a chip on his shoulder. I think he's tired of being the whipping boy. I think he's tired of all those, shots that you see on highlights where Nick Saban's yelling at him. And I think he wants to be a head coach. Look, LSU wanted him. LSU was prepared to offer him about $2 million to be his offensive coordinator, work with his best friend, one of his best friends, Ed Orgeron. But what this tells you is he wants to be a head football coach. And I think he realizes if I want to prove myself as a head coach, I just got to take a job like FAU and win. And you know what? I won't be as scrutinized at FAU as I was at USC or Tennessee, where every little thing I did got scrutinized. At FAU, man, they're going to leave you alone, and he's going to coach, and he's going to do it. He's going to bring them some attention. But if they win, they're going to be ecstatic, and maybe that leads him to another job down the road. But I think for FAU, let's be honest, FAU's been in the headlines here more this past week for this hire than they have been in a long time.
Probably since Howard Schnellenberger was there.
Yeah, sure. I think that's valid. And he's got an on-campus stadium there, all right, that he's gonna be able to use.
It's in Boca, nice place to be. You can sell the kids on, hey, stay in South Florida. Yeah. It's nice up here. It's nice. Well, up here if we're recruiting in if you're recruiting in Broward and Miami-Dade, it's up in Boca Raton. But it seems like the right fit. I feel like it's going to go either really good or really, really bad. There's no middle of the road here with this.
But it's a good gamble. If you're FAU, what do you got to lose? To me, it's a good gamble. The guy can coach. So we'll see how that goes. And I think he's going to bring the attention there. Now, on to Butch, who you and I know very well. We followed him down in South Florida, built that Miami program in the 2000s, was under Jimmy Johnson's staff.
Who said, actually, remember in that documentary, the sequel to the U, that he regretted leaving Miami when he did.
As he should.
Yeah.
As he should. I mean, which is fascinating, by the way. And there's something that those documentaries didn't make. Howard Schnellenberger and Butch Davis, think about how their legacies would be different if they didn't leave Miami when they did. Howard Schnellenberger left after the first national title for the USFL. I mean, he could have won for years at Miami and become an icon.
And left for a team that never materialized, never played a game.
Sure. Correct. And then for Butch, he left after 2000. I mean, that 2001 Miami team, which many believe is one of, if not the best college football team ever, was all Butch. And Larry Coker got the fruits of that labor. So I agree. He should regret that. Now, a lot of attention on Lane's baggage. Butch has some baggage. And that goes back to North Carolina.
Yep.
Where he had some off-the-field issues, academic issues there, that North Carolina is still dealing with to this day. That's why Butch has kind of been blackballed to some degree and clearly didn't get the Miami job last year. It was no secret that Butch wanted back that Miami job and had support for it. He didn't get it. And I think Butch, obviously, who's been doing television at ESPN, realized he wasn't going to get another Power 5 opening anytime soon because of what happened in North Carolina. So if you can't get the Miami job that you wanted, he obviously knows that area. He's going to go to FIU. Pete Garcia, the athletic director who's moving on, used to be at UM. And I think Butch will be able to recruit guys to play at FIU. Now, the facilities are not very good at FIU. We've all been there. That's going to be a challenge for Butch. But Butch is a tremendous recruiter. If anybody spent time with him, he can recruit. And he knows the state. The high school coaches know him. He likes him. He's a tremendous evaluator of talent. He can judge talent as good as anybody in this state has. So I think he'll bring FIU to respectability. And it's not like FIU can't win. Remember, when Mario Cristobal was the head coach at FIU, they had T.Y. Hilton and those guys. Mm-hmm. They were going to bowl games as well.
They beat us. They beat us at least once with Mario. I think maybe even twice.
Yeah. So they won that game in 2011 that you're talking about at FIU.
Well, Mario beat us once. FIU's beaten us twice, but right. Cristobal, and he was a hot name for a while for a head coaching job.
Right.
Former UM offensive lineman.
Yes, and FIU made a huge mistake letting Mario Cristobal go.
Yeah, they did.
After after the year that they had a down year, and then they got rid of him, and that they haven't recovered from that. So I think they're hopeful that Butch can kind of bring some excitement there. I am fascinated to see the staffs that both guys will bring to those respective programs. Something to keep in mind about Cristobal, he did play at UM, as you mentioned, when Butch was around as an assistant.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, he was also, I believe, he was at Miami under Butch. He coached under Butch from 98 to 2000. So there's a connection there. I only bring that, so it's kind of interesting that they would go that route. I'm not suggesting that Cristobal is going to join them at FIU, but what I am saying is I'm sure that Butch has picked Mario Cristobal's brain about what the good and the bad about FIU. I think this is the strongest that FAU and FIU have put out there as far as at the same time from a coaching standpoint. And from that standpoint, that will make it harder for UCF, because I think it's not going to be as easy to pluck kids away from that area and take them away from FAU and FIU and et cetera than there was maybe in the past. I do think this state has gotten tougher in the back end now, where FAU and FIU is going to be able to steal a kid or two that maybe would have gone to UCF or USF. And look, Mark Richt.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
He's a kid too as well in Miami.
I was just going to say, easy for us to forget Mark Richt is at Miami now.
Who I think is doing a heck of a job there, is going to do a great job there. So I think this is the most depth in this state from a coaching standpoint that we've ever had. Usually there's always been a weak link or two that you kind of like Ron Turner, nobody really took seriously. So with all due respect to the previous coaches at FAU and, after Howard Snellenberger, and then obviously since Mario Cristobal, this is the first time I think teams will take seriously FAU and FIU. And I think with Butch and Lane, and I think Butch is going to be there longer than Lane. They're going to be able to steal some kids away and compete in Conference USA. And keep this in mind: UCF will open the football season in 2017 against Butch Davis at FIU. Butch Davis's first game will be in Orlando in 2017.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing, how it shakes out with those programs. I do think, though, you're right. I think recruiting just got a lot tougher for Scott Frost down in Broward, Palm Beach, and Miami-Dade. And if he's going to get the kids that he wants to get in to run UCF fast with Florida-level speed, he's going to have to work a lot harder in those three counties, down to what Howard Schnellenberger used to call the state of Miami. It's going to be a lot tougher for him to pry some of those kids out from. It's one thing when you're recruiting against Partridge or whatever the heck his name was at FAU, and Ron Turner. It's another thing to be going up against Butch Davis and Mark Richt and Lane Kiffin, who is going to be bringing out a lot of flash to FAU as well.
It is.
So,
but let's not sell Scott Frost short. And trust me, Scott Frost is not shaking in his boots over Charlie Strong or Lane Kiffin, any of these guys. In fact, Scott Frost tells you here, there's a lot UCF has to offer that maybe some of these schools don't.
Well, there's a lot of good coaches being hired. Recruiting is definitely going to be a battle in the state of Florida with some of the people they've hired. But we feel like we have the best college town in the state of Florida. We think we have the best university in the state of Florida and the best campus in the state of Florida. We'll go to battle to get as many of the right kids as we possibly can. But I know a lot of those guys are good coaches and good recruiters.
How about that, Jeff? Saying UCF has the best, most to offer from an atmosphere and fan and university environment. I mean, Scott Frost, did that sound like a guy that's concerned about these new hires? It doesn't sound he's concerned at all.
Well, I think what he's saying is our fan base needs to prove it, starting with this bowl game coming up and heading into next year too, because one of the concerns is with the attendance. But I think if we can step it up as a fan base, we can help prove him right, because when the place is rocking. I remember when Miami came here to the stadium, to Bright House in 2009. It was a sellout, and this place was loud, and I think that he's right. If you can capture that atmosphere, this could be a good couple years for UCF. I just think that Scott's going to have to really earn his money, and it's going to fall on a couple other key guys too, Kevin Smith and Travis Fisher, and those guys going down south and talking to kids about coming to Orlando and selling the UCF program that they grew up in and that they are now coaching in is going to be a critical point for UCF here over the next few years, with all this extra competition now in this suddenly crowded state of Florida for coaching. All right, moving on from football, let's talk a little basketball. Start with men's, and this is the part of the schedule that we were starting to get a little bit worried at. They got the win over Maryland Eastern Shore on December the 10th, 76-58, but then came back at home 2 days later, faced a tough Penn team. These frickin' Ivy League schools, man, I don't know what the heck they do, but they just they play chess when other teams play checkers out there on the floor. Penn beats UCF by 9, 58-49, holds UCF to if I'm not mistaken here, their lowest point total of the year, 49 points. Looking at the shooting numbers for UCF, only shot 32% from the field, 17 out of 52. Taco Fall was 8 for 8. So if you remove Taco Fall from UCF's box score, the Knights shot 9 of 44 from the field against Penn. Taco had 17 points and 17 boards in that game. Knights, I think, right now are really missing B.J. Taylor, who's out with a hand injury. That's
well, that's the big thing. I mean, really, that's the elephant in the room. I mean, really, that should have been the headline.
That's one that's gonna hurt, and hopefully BJ can make it back soon. Hopefully by, I don't know how long it's gonna take. It's gonna be a couple weeks, I think, at least, right?
They need to get him back as soon as possible at the conference. I mean, it's noticeable their offense hasn't been the same without him in the 2 games. You look at that Penn game, Taco Fall only got like 1 shot in the second half, I believe, and he was open at a lot of times, and they can't feed the ball in there. They don't have a true point guard on the roster. We talked about the lack of guys on the roster with scholarships and stuff. That's a huge loss. So this team's going to struggle without him. There's no question, and I think we've seen that. And I don't, that's the big question. The only question I have for the rest of the way for basketball from now until conference is when does B.J. Taylor return? Because if he does not return anytime soon, they're going to struggle. And it's not going to get easier. You got George Washington on the road. That's going to be tough. Miami of Ohio at home. That's not going to be a cakewalk all of a sudden. And then before you know it, you open conference play against Temple on New Year's Eve. So it's right around the corner. And again, I cannot emphasize B.J. Taylor is significant. He is the quarterback of this team, and they need him. And you just hope that he can get back here sooner than later.
He was playing so well leading up to this injury too, so couldn't it really happen at a worse time? Hopefully, he can get back, like you said, as soon as possible. Women's, on the other hand, they got another victory in their back pocket. By the way, let me go back real quick. The men's basketball team, I should say, 7-2 right now. Still not a bad position to be with 3 games left to go before conference play starts. Women's, on the other hand, they are 8-2. Got a 14-point win over Gardner-Webb at home in an old matchup, in an old former Atlantic Sun Conference matchup. They've got now a whole week off before they go up to Statesboro, Georgia, to play Georgia Southern on December the 17th, which is at 2 p.m. the day of the bowl game. But looking at this Gardner-Webb win, again, the Knights shoot 44%. 3 of 12 from three-point range, 3 of 8 from Zy Lewis from beyond the arc, who led the team in scoring with 20 and 5 assists to go with 5 boards. She was 7 of 18 from the field. Aaliyah Gregory also, boy, has she come into her own, 6 of 14 from the field, 13 points. But Coach Abe and the crew out-rebounded Gardner-Webb 40-27. You know Coach Abe likes to see that. And they get the victory over the Bulldogs by 14 points. Jumped out quickly. They were up 44-22 at the half. They were doubling up Gardner-Webb at the half. They've gotten off to some really quick starts this year, Elo, and so far it's been showing. Hopefully they can keep it up. But I can't get over how impressed I've been with how this team has come together.
Yeah, I think you're seeing the dividends already of Coach Abe there and her arrival, and she's shown that she could coach. And I think there's a reason Danny White brought her here, and I know Danny White is excited and surprised. I think he's even commented on it, how he feels they're actually ahead of schedule this year. So, they got a couple weeks to fine-tune themselves before they open conference play themselves. So it's just, can they find enough consistency on the offensive side of the ball? I think they've proven they can rebound and they can defend, but can they get consistent on offense?
The coup de grace as we start to come down the home stretch here on this episode of the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Eric Lopez, your UCF softball team released their schedule for the 2017 season earlier on Tuesday. Some of the highlights of the teams that they're going to be playing. Obviously, they start the season with an invitational that welcomes in Florida A&M in-state, but also Pitt and Kentucky. So ACC, SEC coming in. They head out to Palm Springs again for the Mary Nutter Classic and take on some tough teams from out west. Cal Poly's pretty good. UCLA, California. We know how good UCLA is. Loyola Marymount out in California, also very good. And they come back on the way back. They go to Tuscaloosa for a tournament, playing against the likes of Texas Tech, Alabama, Gardner-Webb. before they finally come back into the state of Florida. They welcome Providence for a UCF Invitational, and then they also have, here's a really good slate at a home tournament in March where they welcome Ohio State, Delaware State, Mercer, and Georgia. So you get an Ohio State out of the Big Ten, Georgia out of the SEC. Coach Renee Gillespie once again loading up this schedule, man. I got Iowa State, Baylor at home, Florida State at home before you even start conference play. They're at Florida in Gainesville April 19th. I mean, my goodness, this is almost like what I was talking about with women's soccer, just loading up this schedule for softball. What stands out to you?
Yeah, I mean the home schedule is amazing, and it is
amazing. It is as brutal as it is amazing.
Yeah, with a young team too. That's the thing. It's a very young team. Young in the pitching staff, young across the board. They lost 10 seniors, so But again, it tells you that Coach Gillespie she'll play anybody, anywhere, anytime. And I think the exciting thing is teams are willing to play her now at home.
Yeah, that's the big change. I think that's been fun to see.
You got Georgia coming in for a tournament. Georgia's a Women's College World Series representative last year. Baylor's coming here for a 3-game series to return the favor after UCF went to Baylor last year. Florida State comes here for the midweek game.
Bama's coming down. Ohio State's coming down.
Well, Bama's in Tuscaloosa. They were turning.
That's right. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Which I was there a couple years ago at Alabama. This is they run a fantastic first class tournament up there with Patrick Murphy. They play Alabama twice up there. They got Baylor. It's a tough schedule, no question about it. I mentioned Mary Nutter. That's the most premier tournament in college softball in the regular season. So,
how many times has UCF played in that tournament? By the way,
they played there last year. They played there last year for the first time. So this will be their second trip. And that's an invitee. You're only invited if you are respected among the best in the country. So that's not a tournament that anybody can just get into. Yeah, so
that's not a cupcake slate that they got there either.
No, it is not. I mean, and they went, they played the best. They played like 3 World Series teams last year in that tournament. So the young girls are going to learn a lot, and they're going to learn about themselves. And I think the goal is to make yourself learn what you have to work on and get yourself ready for conference. And it's among the best teams in the country, and you prove themselves. We haven't even mentioned the fact they're going to go to Florida, of course.
Florida State comes here.
Yeah, it's an amazing schedule. I mean, I know it comes off as a shill, but I mean, why not buy your season tickets? I mean, are you kidding me? Oh my goodness!
Well, what I like is they got some softball rivals coming into town in conference play. Houston comes here. USF comes here. UConn comes here. So when you get to conference play, it's going to get crazy, and there's a really good home conference slate as well, not to mention, like we mentioned, the out-of-conference. So that'll be something that we'll keep an eye on. The season starts, the opener, Friday, February 10th. All right, so as we wrap up, don't forget, folks, Eric and I will be at the bowl game, at the AutoNation Cure Bowl on Saturday, covering the game. And as soon as possible after the game, we're going to have some post-game reaction for you on a sort of instant podcast, if you will. First time that we're actually doing that here on the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. So that should be fun. Looking forward to that. Hopefully UCF can get the win in the bowl game and finish the season above 500 and head into the offseason on a winning note, Eric.
Absolutely. Should be fun.
Yeah, it's going to be fun being in the old Citrus Bowl again. Well, even though it's the new Citrus Bowl, but it's always good to go back there, and it'll be fun to see black and gold on the field once again. What else do you have on tap for yourself this week, Eric?
It's going to be busy. I will be filling in on Tuck and O'Neill as the host. Jerry will be off 3 to 7 on Sports Talk 1080 The Team Orlando. We're also on in Gainesville and on Ocala now. And
that's
you're going
to be news too up in Central Florida.
Yeah.
All throughout Lightning Alley.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. You're going to be on that show. We're going to have you on. We don't know the time yet, but you'll be on during that show to preview the bowl game. And then I'll be hosting the Sports Talk Florida Insider Show, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. on 1080 Orlando Saturday, a big kind of an unofficial pregame leading into the bowl game. Despina Barton from Spectrum Sports will be my special co-host, and we'll have some guests. I think Jamie Say of KMG, who's going to be covered UCF, will be on, among a bunch of other people.
Syracuse University graduate Jamie Say.
Yeah, she's working sideline for the Cure Bowl coverage of they have a broadcast that's sent out to a lot of people, and she'll be a part of that. So we'll talk. I'll talk to her about that and among other things. And And then for you UCF fans that tune into the UCF football broadcast on the radio style, you might hear a familiar voice in there filling in for Scotty Adams. I won't say who or where or what, but you all can figure it out. That's all I'll say.
Well, it should be a fun week leading up to the bowl game. Don't forget that like we said, it's something that we've been really looking forward to. I know that I have for quite a while, and I wanted to send off again a congratulations to Alan Gooch and the crew, a bunch of guys in the UCF circle that we know for putting on this game, and it should be fun. Hopefully UCF can get a win for everyone there. And for all of us here at the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast, don't forget, by the way, you can follow us at UCF_Banneret. Follow me at Jeff_Sharon, and follow Eric Lopez at Eric Lopez Elo. Don't forget to hit us up on Facebook and on our website, blackandgoldbanneret.com, where you can get email updates and subscribe to this podcast if you don't already, on iTunes, on SoundCloud, and also on Google Play. Eric, I'll catch you at the game.
Looking forward to it, Jeff.
All right, and thank you for listening. This has been the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. We'll catch you following the Cure Bowl on Saturday, December the 17th, right here at blackandgoldbanneret.com.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.